Challenging the Status Quo, a blueprint for constructive social change in an era marked by deepening inequalities and systemic oppression. Movement building emerges as the essential mechanism for catalyzing transformation. This guide dissects the strategic frameworks, historical lessons, and grassroots methodologies vital for activists seeking lasting societal impact. The power to reshape systems lies not in isolated efforts, but in collective action rooted in shared purpose and sustained energy. By examining real-world campaigns, we uncover how deliberate coalition building and innovative strategies forge pathways toward justice. Redefining movement building for the modern era. Traditional understandings of social movements often center around iconic protests and legislative victories. Contemporary movement building transcends these boundaries, embracing fluid networks of individuals united by common goals rather than fixed hierarchies. This evolving approach emphasizes adaptability over rigidity, recognizing that structural change requires diverse tactics spanning policy reform, cultural shifts, and economic redistribution. Crucially, modern movements prioritize inclusivity at every stage, actively dismantling barriers to full participation. Dynamism. Movement architects must remain agile, pivoting strategies in response to shifting political landscapes and emerging demands. Intersectionality. Recognize overlapping oppressions that shape individual experiences and institutional inequities. Decentralized leadership. Foster shared decision-making models that empower local voices over top-down directives. Historical precedents demonstrate that the most enduring movements blend immediate demands with long-term vision. The civil rights marches of the 1960s combined direct confrontation with visionary legislation, creating a dual pathway for progress. Today's activists inherit this legacy while confronting new challenges. Surveillance technologies, algorithmic censorship, and corporate influence demand innovations in outreach, security protocols, and narrative framing unlike anything seen in past decades. Building coalitions that transcend traditional boundaries. Effective coalitions require more than mutual agreement on broad objectives. They necessitate trust cultivation through sustained dialogue, resource sharing, and recognition of distinct struggles. Start with targeted listening sessions across community sectors, prioritizing marginalized voices in agenda-setting processes. Allocate resources equitably to reflect the disproportionate burdens borne by oppressed groups. Strategies for sustainable coalition development. Establish rotating co-chair structures to prevent power consolidation within any single group. Implement transparent communication channels including multilingual updates and accessible meeting formats. Create working groups focused on cross-movement priorities like criminal justice reform, climate resilience, and healthcare equity, allowing organic collaboration outside formal meetings. Schedule regular people-powered summits hosted in community spaces rather than conference centers, reinforcing the principle that social change originates locally before scaling outward. Develop conflict resolution protocols addressing inevitable disagreements, emphasizing mediation training and harm accountability measures to preserve coalition integrity during crises. Harnessing the transformative power of storytelling. Narratives serve as movement fuel, shaping public perception and mobilizing support. When crafted deliberately, personal stories humanize abstract issues and reveal the lived realities behind datasets. Beyond protest signs and press releases, curate multimedia narratives showing systemic impacts on everyday life, from evictions to medical discrimination, to create emotional resonance with broader audiences. Testimonial archives. Document first-hand accounts digitally to preserve histories often erased by dominant media narratives. Cultural production. Support art, music, and performance works that reinterpret struggle through creative expression. Counter-narratives. Proactively address mainstream misinformation with well-researched alternative perspectives. Foster intergenerational storytelling projects linking current battles to historical resistance, ensuring continuity between movements while adapting strategies to new contexts. Implement ethical storytelling guidelines to protect participants' privacy and agency, ensuring their narratives aren't co-opted without consent or credit. Tactical organizing. Creating strategic inflection points. Movement success depends on calculated timing, carefully selecting moments when existing tensions intersect with movement agendas to maximize impact. Develop multifaceted campaign calendars incorporating direct actions, legal initiatives, artistic interventions, and educational programs at critical junctures like elections, commemorations, and regulatory deadlines. Leverage micro-targeting techniques to identify communities already mobilized around related causes, facilitating strategic alliances that expand reach without diluting core messages. Cultivate emergency response protocols for heightened repression periods, preparing volunteers for arrests, media engagement, and rapid information dissemination through encrypted channels. Leveraging technology without losing human connection. Digital platforms offer unparalleled access to global solidarity networks while posing risks of platform dependence and surveillance exposure. Balance online presence with physical organizing infrastructure. Invest in decentralized communication ecosystems utilizing mesh networking, open source apps, and off-grid capabilities to maintain operational resilience amid internet shutdowns. Cybersecurity training. Educate members on secure communications, encryption practices, and threat identification. Data sovereignty. Choose hosting services committed to digital rights protections instead of profit-driven corporations. Accessibility. Ensure all digital tools accommodate users with disabilities, language differences, and varying tech literacy levels. Use artificial intelligence responsibly for tasks like monitoring hate speech patterns, analyzing policy proposals, or optimizing logistics rather than replacing human judgment with automated decisions. Maintain offline backup plans for all digital activities, storing sensitive information on physically secure devices stored separately from networked systems. Designing intersectional frameworks for collective liberation. True liberation requires simultaneous attention to race, class, gender, ability, sexuality, and other identity dimensions, recognizing that these factors intertwine to produce compounded forms of marginalization. Integrate anti-oppression trainings into staff development pipelines, ensuring leaders are equipped to call out microaggressions, privilege, and institutional bias within organizational settings. Concrete steps toward interlocking struggles. Adopt pay equity policies that acknowledge varied financial needs among LGBTQ+, disabled, and Indigenous staff members beyond standard minimum wage calculations. Create accessibility task forces to audit event venues, communication materials, and digital platforms for ADA compliance and cultural appropriateness. Track demographic participation data transparently, regularly publishing reports on representation gaps and implementing corrective actions to increase inclusion. Establish mentorship pipelines connecting historically excluded groups with decision-making roles, actively countering homogenized leadership paradigms. Measuring progress beyond standard metrics. Conventional success indicators like number of arrests or ballot propositions fall short of capturing holistic movement health. Develop alternative metrics reflecting qualitative changes in consciousness and institutional culture. Prioritize surveys gauging shifts in bystander intervention behaviors, internalized stigma reduction, and collective efficacy perceptions over quantitative counts of demonstrations attended. Societal diagnostics. Monitor prevalence of harmful norms such as policing behavior or prejudice through longitudinal research. Micro-level assessments. Track neighborhood safety improvements, reduced incarceration rates, or mental health resource availability. Future preparedness. Measure capacity for sustaining independent operations in crisis scenarios through simulated drills. Employ participatory evaluation methods involving community stakeholders rather than relying solely on academic researchers. Detached from lived realities. Create iterative feedback loops enabling continuous improvement based on frontline experiences rather than static benchmarks set by external funders or institutions. Maintaining resilience through personal and collective care. Exhaustion, trauma, and burnout threaten both organizers and movement longevity. Build care infrastructures as fundamental components rather than afterthoughts in activist work. Implement trauma-informed practices in meetings and trainings, creating safe spaces for processing difficult emotions triggered by re-experiencing oppressive systems. Develop peer support networks matching experienced mentors with newcomers facing particular stressors, fostering mentoring relationships rather than hierarchical supervision models. Ensure compensation packages exceed basic living wages, offering stipends covering childcare, transportation, and wellness expenses typically considered private costs. Regularly evaluate workload distribution for imbalances arising from unpaid labor expectations or unequal access to professional development opportunities. Navigating state repression with tactical ingenuity. Authoritarian regimes employ increasingly sophisticated tactics to dismantle dissent, from legal harassment to algorithmic manipulation. Anticipate countermeasures by studying historical repression patterns alongside contemporary developments. Establish non-traditional communication channels resistant to conventional shutdown methods, such as amateur radio networks, courier-based messaging, and in-person relay systems. Civil disobedience training. Prepare supporters for mass arrests with legal aid workshops and bail funds structured to withstand asset freezes. Mobility solutions. Coordinate clandestine transport options for fugitives using ride-sharing apps adapted for discrete pickups/drop-offs. Fundraising safeguards. Diversify revenue streams through international donors, crowdsourced contributions via blockchain, and underground economy exchanges. Document suppression attempts systematically to build evidence for international pressure campaigns, diplomatic appeals, and truth commission submissions. Anticipate misinformation campaigns by pre-registering credible sources for swift rebuttal deployment through trusted networks when coordinated propaganda erupts. Learning from global struggle histories. Analyze international case studies revealing what worked and failed in previous epochs of radical change, drawing parallels to contemporary challenges while respecting local specificity. Study Zapatista autonomy strategies demonstrating self-governance in occupied territories, applying lessons to urban grassroots initiatives aiming to establish alternative governance structures. Examine Chilean student movement adaptations showing how youth-led campaigns influenced higher education reforms despite government crackdowns. Review feminist insurrections in Central America highlighting transnational coordination mechanisms and regional support networks resilient to divisive geopolitics. Dissect Black Lives Matter's viral growth pattern illustrating how localized incidents can spark nationwide awareness through coordinated media strategies and decentralized organizing. Visioning the next frontier of people-powered transformation. As authoritarian tendencies grow globally, movement builders must innovate relentlessly, integrating ancient wisdom with cutting-edge technology to redefine freedom in the digital age. Develop autonomous energy grids, communal kitchens, and cooperative housing models. Demonstrating alternatives to extractive capitalism at hyperlocal levels while challenging macroeconomic structures. Utilize AI-generated virtual reality experiences simulating life under proposed policy changes, creating immersive educational tools to bridge comprehension gaps with technologically literate generations. Experiment with cryptographic voting systems enhancing election security against foreign interference, merging democratic values with cyber resilience requirements. Engage in planetary-scale climate justice advocacy leveraging interconnected global networks, linking local environmental fights with interdependent ecological systems across borders. Conclusion. Movement building remains our best hope for overcoming entrenched systems of domination. This roadmap offers tested approaches and forward-looking strategies applicable to both new organizers and seasoned activists navigating today's complex terrain. Actionable steps emerge not from perfect blueprints but through continuous adaptation. Prioritize relationship-centered work, embrace messy process over clean answers, and remember that sustainable change grows out of daily acts of courage in service of collective liberation.